Hello there, YouTube. Devin here again. Today I have, if you can't tell from the title, a video on the Swiss entrenching tool. Now this one is a World War II dated one. The carrier is made in 42, the entrenching tool itself is made in 43, and at some point got a new handle because it has this kind of hexagonal handle. But before we get into the entrenching tool itself, this one specifically, we got to talk a little bit of history about the entrenching tool. So the entrenching tool's history goes basically back to almost Roman times. Into Roman times, there was entrenching tools being used, carried by the legionaries, and everything like that. And it would morph and change. You would see full-size pickaxes, spades, and shovels being used throughout history and in most militaries and everything like that. But you wouldn't see the modern entrenching tool developed until 1869. Okay, now 1869 is really, really early. The modern day entrenching tool, which is very similar in shape, actually, to this one, and very few of them would change for quite a long time, was invented by a Danish man whose name escapes me. But it was invented in Denmark in the 1869 and 1870. It was adopted by Denmark as their kind of new standard infantry entrenching tool. Now, there's a couple different ways you can say entrenching. You could spell it, I-N trenching, then there's E-N trenching, and then sometimes you just see trenching tool rather than entrenching or entrenching, which is kind of weird. But trenching tool seems to be, I think, the best. So, because everyone knows what you're talking about when you just say trenching tool, which is a tool for digging trenches and or fortifying positions, stuff like that. You would not see the entrenching tool, though, catch on after Denmark would adopt it. So you would not see it really catching on until Austria-Hungary in 1871. This Danish man who owns a patent on the modern entrenching tool, which looks very similar to this square blade, and everything like that, he would set up a factory in Vienna to make entrenching tools for the Austro-Hungarian military in 1871. That is when it really starts taking over. Entrenching tools start cranking out of that factory and being sold to tons of other countries, all over Germany, obviously Austria-Hungary. You would see a lot of the Balkan states. Russia would be a big buyer of the modern day entrenching tool, and it really hasn't changed much since then. You would see this would kind of stay standard all the way through the late 1800s and into into the 1900s. Actually, you could still see these in use with some armies into like the 70s. Then eventually you start seeing innovations to the entrenching tool. They get smaller, they get more compact. There's some that have spade tips, some that are still square, different materials rather than being made out of steel or iron. You start seeing, aluminum ones and titanium ones, different handles, collapsible folding ones that on the back have, can pivot, and you could have the blade at multiple different angles if you wanted to use it as a mattock or pickaxe, as some people know it, or as a shovel, depending on what position you want to have the blade folded in. But this would pretty much be the standard. You would see a square blade riveted in place. This would be pretty standard for a long time, and even then, when you would see this not being the standard, it would basically just be a spade tip rather than a square tip. The entrenching tool is probably the most common bladed type weapon or tool that I own. I own quite a few of them, actually, for good reason. And a lot of it is because its only limitations are your imagination. The entrenching tool can be, an axe. It can be a melee weapon, and it's a very good melee weapon. Why carry two different melee weapons when you could carry this literal, not to be a pun here, Swiss Army knife of tools, even though it's a shovel and it is made by Switzerland? Because its only limits are your imagination. It's a shovel. It's a melee weapon. It's a frying pan. It's a boat paddle. It's a grappling hook. It's it's whatever you want it to be. So its only limits are your imagination, and that's why I like it so much, because you could do so much with this one tool. Like, you could literally heat this up and cook over it. You could literally cut down trees and make firewood with these. I mean, if you put enough of an edge on them and stuff like that. So We'll take a look at the carrier here. In traditional Swiss fashion, it is incredibly well built. So as you can see, there is, flip it over so you can see it, hopefully it'll focus. There is the stamp right there, 1942 dated. There's the little acceptance mark. Very, very good condition this carrier is, pretty much unissued. It's that nice. And then the entrenching tool has probably been issued quite a lot, because there is pitting and there is marks on it, but it's been painted over, and it's been painted over pretty well. Now the entrenching tool itself has the little stamp right there, and that's dated 43. So the shovel's actually newer than the carrier is in this case, but I got the entrenching tool first and I got the carrier separate second, because I wanted to have one, and I really like this kind of entrenching tool. But it's just two big thick pieces of leather, as you can see, that have kind of formed the blade over the years, and then it has obviously some stitching and some rivets for reinforcement, and it would be secured in place over the blade by means of this strap and this stud. It has two loops to hook around your belt or to put on equipment that are also keyhole stud type connectors, and it's just an overall a very, very good entrenching tool. This is probably one of my favorite ones in my collection, honestly. It's super duper nice. And a lot of people don't really know the history of the entrenching tool, and I do, because I'm one of the few people that actually really cares about it, and it's a really fantastic piece of equipment to the point where they're still issued. Nice, short, handy little shovels, and they're still used as melee weapons, and they're still used as axes. Modern ones even have little serrations and stuff on them. This one would remain in use until the 60s or 70s with Switzerland, where it would start being replaced with folding models, with pretty much the same handle, and the blade would go from square to being a spade tip. So, but now we're going to continue, with the test of these, I guess, melee weapons, stuff like that, by testing it on some cooked chicken of some variety. Now, the cooked chicken for today, I'm going to try not to make a mess out of this or break my cheap cutting board. I'm going to put a towel to hopefully muffle this a little bit. We have one Tyson chicken patty. And so what we're going to try to do here is we're going to test the chopping power of this entrenching tool, and I'm going to try not to split my cheap Walmart cutting board in half and all that other good jazz. And we're going to see if we could hack this chicken patty right in half here. If I try to line it up here and give her a good smack, we'll see how it goes. So it didn't obviously get through all the way because there's this little kind of dimple on the bottom, but that went through pretty much as expected. You could see if that little nub wasn't there, it would have been a very, very clean cut. There's really only the crispy skin bits on the other end holding through. Now you would hear stories of the entrenching tools much like this, because Austria would issue something like this, and Germany would issue something like this, where when it came time for trench warfare and stuff, you can put one hell of an edge on one side of these entrenching tools and literally cleave somebody at the neck. Right, if you hit them right here, cleave down into their chest cavity, because these are weighty. And if the steel's good enough and they're thin enough to where if you put an edge on one of these sides, you could easily sever a limb. You probably couldn't really fully decapitate somebody, but you could really do some serious damage with one of these, which is kind of how they would become famous. They would be made famous by World War I. Entrenching tools would be, for both the gruesome wounds they could inflict in night raids and stuff like that, as well as giving just about every soldier the ability to entrench himself. So hopefully you like this video and you subscribe if you like this sort of thing. Now I'm gonna go see how deep this divot now is in my cutting board and eat this chicken patty. Hopefully you like and subscribe if you like this sort of thing. This probably won't be as popular as my Fairbairn Sykes video and stuff like that, but people wanted to see my entrenching tool collection and everything like that here as far as the edge weapons go. And I'll try to find more creative food to cut here in the future. But thank you all for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, all that other good stuff. I will leave a link to the Patreon down in the description. $1 on the Patreon gets you into the Discord, which is pretty cool. That's cheaper than a lot more YouTubers. It's a really great, nice, healthy community over there. The goal is to get to $100 a month on Patreon by the end of the year. So I got to get about 30 more $1 patrons in order to achieve that. If you would love to help me do that, I would appreciate it so much. They get first dibs when I go to sell something and stuff like that. Obviously, the Patreon members are going to get first dibs, and I'll oftentimes usually give them a shipping discount. I'll eat a little bit more of the cost of something when I go to sell it to one of my Discord members, so one of my Patreon supporters, just as a thank you for them supporting the channel over the months and stuff like that. It all goes back into helping the channel, so thank you all. I'll end my rant there, my shilling and stuff like that. Hopefully you like this type of video. Hopefully you like this type of entrenching tool. Let me know what you think, and hopefully I can see all of you here in the next video. Bye-bye now.